Hello and welcome to your GG Replay for Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. GG Replay is your Monday, Wednesday, Friday podcast where we break down the latest in gaming news. Hosted by us, the Goodnight Groofs, in the flesh, a place for games and a place for goose flesh. What? No, we're still working on the slogan, changing it up a little bit today. I don't know if that's how it's going to go, though. Matt, how are you doing? I am Paul, obviously, to those at home who do not know, but I'm here with Matt, as always. Are you having a great day today?
I am. I'm having a good day. Did you say goose flesh?
Yeah, so that's like you might have heard of that. That's a French saying, I think, a little bit, where it's like, we get, you get like, what's the word?
Goose
Like
pimples? Is this what you're
goose
referring?
pimples,
Okay,
goose pimples,
yeah.
right? They'll say like goose flesh, or I think they say chicken flesh or something like
Oh,
that.
okay. Cause
Yeah.
like when you pluck their feathers or something, is that where it comes from? Okay.
I think so. It gets like pimply, maybe.
My grandma
Uh,
used to call them goose pimples, and I always
Goose
thought I was
pimples.
always like, that's so strange. You're just an old
It's
person.
very strange, and I can't think of what the actual thing is too. I can't remember now.
Like
Goosebumps.
yeah,
Goosebumps.
goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
and they'll
I
say
guess
that.
is like the same thing. It's just the pimples part makes it weird.
Yeah, and then flesh really makes it weird, and that's like a French translation, I think. So
Yeah.
that's that. Probably not prime slogan material, but I had to go with it. Also, I rhyme flesh with flesh, which really doesn't make sense. Also, by the way, Matt, we made it to a Wednesday, which
We
is pretty
did.
exciting. Hump Day.
Hump day.
If this were a Blizzard sponsored podcast, we would no longer be able to call it that. We'd probably call it like Mountain Day or Hill Day. I don't know, something. Just can't have any sort of any sort of connotations in there. We'll get to that a little bit later today, talking about Blizzard. They are in hot water again. I feel like they have not left the pot, really. And the burner is set. It's fallen off. They broke it right off. All right, Matt, let's get into it. Let's talk about, we have so many interesting stories today, and I'm just psyched to get into it. So, oh, by the way, before we get started, if anyone on video notices, I have a great new Fortnite sweater.
Love that.
Repping the Fortnite. I got it on a discount. So it was a natural buy, $15, official merch. So I'm really repping the Fortnite out here. All right, before we get into the main stuff today, just want to remind everyone at home, if you're playing along at home here, it's not a game show. If you come across any necessary corrections to today's episode, send them over to ggreplayshow@gmail.com or head down to the YouTube comments below so we can address them in the next episode. Matt, the reviews are in. They're in. And we have some interesting games to talk about. Some games that I think we have some opinions on. So first off, we'll start off with the dud here. We got the Amazing American Circus. Already questionable name. It's a deck builder RPG. That part looks okay. Got a 66 on OpenCritic. It's out today. This just looks rough. It looks like an early access rough game. As you can see in reviews, the voice acting is all over the place for English, like totally out of context. Just some of the story, the theme is very strange. Matt, this is something that doesn't excite me anyway. I'm not a circus guy. But does any of this strike you as interesting?
Well, you said strange, which strange fits in with old-timey circus stuff because it's
Sure.
there's like a sense of weirdness to those.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a cool, unique setting for a deck builder, but I don't know if it necessarily does everything that a deck builder needs to do in order to keep up with the Joneses, as it might be.
Yep.
So yeah, I think this is just a dud because it just isn't as deep as the other deck builder, the many deck builders that you now see popping up on Steam all the time. But it's a unique setting, kind of interesting. Like, you have the character avatars of like the strong man and all that kind of stuff. So it's the old timey circus stuff, which can be fascinating, but at the same time, there are just so many deck builders that seem to do the genre better.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. I don't think there's a whole lot to say here besides, it's fine. 66 isn't a great aggregate score. But if this floats your boat, you could probably get by and not hate it. Maybe just turn the sound down. Maybe not listen to the voices. Moving on to something I'm actually pretty interested in. I'm a little mixed. I Am Fish. This is obviously a physics puzzle platformer. It got a 75 on OpenCritic. It's out now as well. It is day one on Game Pass as well. Something interesting about this game, something I did not know, is it's the same developers for I Am Bread and
Oh, that
also
makes
Surgeon Simulator
sense.
2. And so it actually makes sense. The story, which I thought was funny, I just watched in a story review I saw. The story actually is that the sentient bread from I Am Bread is fed to the fish. And that's what makes them sentient in the game. So
Wow.
it's actually what they call the BGU, the Bread Gaming Universe,
That's
that they're
amazing.
building on here, and they're actually building a little bit on the story from the three games. From I think Surgeon Simulator 2 also has some kind of relevance, so they're trying to build that out. Pretty interesting, and it makes sense with like a game that has purposely kind of bad movement controls, like a punishing game like that.
Hmm.
Makes sense when you look at I Am Bread and then I Am Fish. Matt, what's your take on this? I know when both of us looked at it at first, we thought, okay, this is like colorful and looks like something we might, want to try.
Yeah, I love the art style. It looks like a fascinating game. It looks potentially fun, but it also looks really frustrating, which
Yeah,
frustrating platformers. I love platformers, especially 3D platformers. But
yeah.
when they get really physics based and just
And
annoying,
purposefully, like when the controls are meant to be non-responsive,
yes, when it gets
that's tough.
cumbersome and difficult to control, then I get a little bit like, yeah, I don't know if this is my thing. I like tight controls on my platformers. So I don't know. I was initially thinking I was going to try this out, but now that you're mentioning this, the whole I Am Bread Surgeon Simulator thing,
Yeah.
that kind of gives me a better idea of what this is trying to be. And I don't know. I don't think I'm really going to give it a shot, but it is free on Game Pass on console
Yep.
and PC. So
Yep.
maybe at some point, if I'm bored and there's nothing else to do, I'll just give it a quick download.
Yep. I always try these games out. I gave a couple good hours to getting over it with Bennett Foddy.
Oh God.
And I did play I Am Bread. I played Octodad, like the original version of that. And I've tried to play all these like hard to control games. I never end up getting into them for very long because I do get so frustrated and I go like, why would I bother? But I'll probably give this a try. It's on Game Pass. I have loaded it onto my Xbox, so I will probably give it a go. But yeah, it seems like there's different versions of fish you can control, and anyway, it seems cool. But yeah, it seems also from what I've seen more based in like how funny it would be to like have to deal with these like all these games. And I
Right.
think that's why this is a good game to stream. This will be a good game for Let's Players, for streamers, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I think. Do people do Let's Plays anymore that aren't streams? I don't know, but that's what this would be for, and I think it'll be a lot of fun for that crowd. But otherwise may not be a super fun thing to play alone. But from what I've seen, it does seem like a funny story, funny gameplay. So, and is apparently, although most of this is being frustrated because because of the gameplay, you can stretch this to about 10 hours or so. But that's not terrible to play a game like this, even though. From what I heard, the reason it takes 10 hours is because it's so frustrating and like annoying. But even then, like that's not too bad. It's completable for someone who might just want to give it a go for the goof of it. So
Games
yeah.
that are purposely tedious and unresponsive when you have to do very specific things give me like physical anxiety.
Yeah, that's my problem too, is I get extremely anxious and like shaky and it makes me like I get stressed in a really real way more than angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. I totally forgot it. That's exactly I think why I end up quitting these games. And moving on to something that I think surprised some people coming out with a great review here. Kena, Bridge of Spirits, got an action adventure game. Looks like a nice 3D platformer level action adventure Breath of the Wild looking ass
Hmm.
game. Got an 83 on OpenCritic. It is out now. This game's on PlayStation and PlayStation and PC. To my chagrin, because I was
Hmm.
hoping I could play it on Xbox. But I was like, this feels like a Game Pass game. Looks really awesome. I feel like this game is right up your alley.
Oh
Maybe more
yes.
actiony, but I feel like the in general the platforming, the action. This is a classic. 3D action platform game. Matt, lay it on me. Like, what are you excited about? Are you gonna be playing this game?
This has been referred to as sort of like a Zelda like. If you remember the old game Overlord, similar to that, in that you are
Oh, because you
controlling like
have
these minions.
you can control the rot in this, and that's the same
Hmm.
as like the minions. I got like real like real like Overlord Pikmin kind of
Yeah, yeah,
vibe.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I am really excited to play this game.
Hmm.
It's only $40. You're right. It is right up my alley with the style of gameplay. It looks like a DreamWorks movie or a Pixar
It
movie.
does.
The development studio was actually founded by guys who were animators. So that's what their background is, and that's why it looks this way.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. The initial, like for the last week, people were saying this is going to be a flop because one, the marketing had sort of gone away. The review embargo was for the day of release, which does
Which
often
is,
happen for indie games because it helps with
yeah.
marketing.
But still,
And
it can be. Some people think that means that maybe the game is like
yeah,
going to underperform, and that's why they do it that way sometimes. So
true.
people red flags were coming up for some people, I guess.
And there was gameplay leaked the previous week that looked, I guess, like slightly underperforming in the frames per second side of things.
Right.
But turns out the game comes out. It really came out the gate with it was like an 88 or something on
Yeah,
Metacritic.
yeah,
It
yeah.
eventually went down to like an 84, 85 or something. And on OpenCritic now it's an 83.
Very, very respectable
Very
score.
respectable. It looks like your classic Zelda-like action adventure game with basic combat, basic exploration, but like sometimes that's okay. Like we've talked about many times the resurgence of the AA games.
Yeah.
I'm totally welcoming to that. Not every game needs to be $60 full 30-hour game. Like these 15, 20, 25-hour, I do think that this one actually can go up to like 25 hours. That's what I've been hearing. AA games that don't have as many gameplay features, are a little bit more simplified, that tell an interesting story, that have an interesting aesthetic, that do things a little bit differently but a little bit simplified. I welcome those. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about this game, and I hope to play it this week. I need to get back into Deathloop is what I need to do.
Yes, definitely,
So
definitely.
because they're so different, maybe I can play both at the same time. I usually don't do that, but because the games are so different, maybe I can manage that. But I'm excited about this, Paul. And at $40, it really seems like a great deal.
$40 and good plain fun, right? I mean, that's kind of the vibe. It reminds me of stuff that I would just play for fun, that I would play like a Jack and Daxter or a Banjo Kazooie or something like that. And Kena really has that vibe to me. Seems like it could be launching a really good platformer. This could be maybe the new answer to Knack that failed so poorly. This could be a better, platformer that maybe Sony might try to jump onto in some way. Maybe they might, get into this dev more. I mean, obviously they were helping with marketing a lot early on and kind of backing this game a bit. So, this could be a really good sign for that character and for that world too. Also important to remember too that I'm sorry. Let me just go back one more second to say I think that this, judging by the success of this game so far, this really feels like it might have a much higher budget too, a much higher budget sequel to this maybe.
I agree.
Because of what we've seen here. We've already seen them do so well. We might see something really blowing, maybe over ambitious. I don't know, but really putting money behind this now that we saw this. But yeah, I think $40 good plain fun. I love to see it. I think I might have had some other stupid stuff to say, but ultimately it looks like a blast. I was going to say the one cool thing that can stretch the game out too, which is so cool, is like the collectible stuff. I saw you can like get different outfits and stuff for the Rot characters, the cute little dudes,
The
and
little
you can
different
put, like,
hats and masks,
little hairstyles and hats, and yeah, I love that. After just trying to put a good 2 hours into Skatebird before I had to put it down out of like sheer eye strain from looking at it. Ultimately, the customizing of the birds was really fun, and I love customizing cute characters. So that's a cool aspect to put into a game that really has no business like even having time or energy to put something into like that in. Like, it would be great if it didn't have that. It would be cute anyway, and like that's such a cool addition.
It is. I'm excited about this one. It looks fun.
Yep. Talking about good, plain, fun, adorable games for, well, probably not so reasonable prices. But let's talk about Nintendo. Nintendo Direct was announced. It's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, which is, we weren't expecting a Nintendo Direct, only one day of notice. And they are promising roughly 40 minutes of information focused mainly on hashtag Nintendo Switch games launching this winter. This is a quote from Nintendo on Twitter. So we don't really know a lot about what's going on in the winter season. November, December. All we know so far is in November, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is coming out, and Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. But then, we're not getting other Pokemon Arceus and stuff. Legend Arceus until January, right? And we have some stuff coming out in October for Nintendo, but not a lot of like holiday releases. Now, I can't even really think of games that are really on the horizon that they could be like, hey, we haven't set the date yet, but the date's going to be in like 2 months. I don't even know what that would be, but it seems kind of weird that they would even like, is this going to be holiday? They say winter season, which makes me think obviously it's going to be, or winter. They say winter. Makes me think maybe it'll be a more of a January, February. It's like, hey, maybe we're going to announce when you're going to get, probably not Zelda, but something like that.
That's possible, I think.
Matt, do you have any thoughts, like games on the horizon here that might be coming out? Like, I don't think we really know a whole bunch.
Yeah, I mean, we might, like the two games you mentioned, Shin Megami Tensei 5, we'll see something for that. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, we'll see something for that. Maybe more Pokemon Arceus or Arceus, because that's January, but I don't know, because they just did stuff on that. Breath of the Wild, we know it's 2022. Where in 2022, we have no idea. So I don't know, but to me, I think this means new announcements, games that we haven't actually heard about yet. Maybe smaller titles, or maybe it's time for another Mario Kart or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, that would maybe make sense to me. I don't know how much more they can squeeze out of the current Mario Kart on Switch.
You're right, being that it's a Wii U game.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think we're gonna see some new stuff though. It's definitely intriguing, and it's hard to speculate because, like you said, we just really don't know. And Nintendo, I feel like outside of some of their big titles like Breath of the Wild 2 and Pokemon stuff, I feel like they have been pretty good about dropping announcements for games and saying, oh yeah, and this comes out in a couple months. Like over the last few years, they've actually been pretty good about that. So the idea of that is definitely intriguing, that we could see brand new stuff that's coming very soon. So
I agree.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm excited for anything. I mean, it's always cool to see this, and it's cool to see them hyping it up. But also, we're getting a little bit more here. So there's a lot of rumors of a new controller, a new Switch controller being revealed in this direct. So that's not necessarily what Nintendo's been promising, but this is something that they are heavily rumored to mention. Now, this could go a lot of ways. I see a lot of people, speculating maybe this could be an N64 thing, maybe for emulation. Maybe they'll announce something, or maybe something for Game Boy for emulation. This is a lot of wishful thinking. Maybe a new Joy-Con. Would that new Joy-Con be able to be a Joy-Con that's fixing drift? Unlikely, but that would be incredible if that were something that Nintendo were to come out with, especially when, a lot of companies are using the same kind of technology now. So Nintendo would actually kind of be weirdly at the forefront if they came out first talking about drift. Although it is something that plagues them more than others. We know this rumor, obviously, because the new game controller was registered with the FCC by Nintendo, but, we don't, everything else is confidential, so we don't actually have any info. Matt, if you had to guess right now, what do you feel like this is going to be? Do you have any kind of inclinations? Do you think it's something related to emulation, maybe something for pro controller stuff?
I think it's probably a new type of Joy-Con that, one, doesn't have the drift, ideally, and two, has a traditional D-pad instead of just the buttons. That would be my guess. I think those are going to be the two main features. They probably won't mention no drift as a feature, but it might be alluded to in some way, like improved performance, they might say, or something like that, or improved durability or something like that. But yeah, I do think the D-pad is something that people have been wanting since the Switch launched, just because the buttons don't necessarily act the same way as a traditional directional pad would. So I do think that's what we'll see. I don't anticipate a new Pro controller or anything like that. I do think it's going to be just a new version of Joy-Cons.
You don't think we're going to get a 3-pronged N64 emulation controller?
I really don't see that happening.
What would be great is if we got an addition, so you could have your 2 Joy-Cons, and then at the bottom you could hook up another third Joy-Con, and then that's how you emulate N64. Get right in the USB-C port down there, just and then you have them all there. That would be an interesting way to go with it. I'm really interested to see what they do. I think it'd be cool if they came up with a controller just for emulation for like Game Boy or N64. I think it's not necessary, but it'd be kind of fun. Yeah, you're probably right. I would love for this to be something that's fixing drift. I have a feeling IMO that it's going to be another pro controller-y kind of thing, just like maybe a revision on that, even though that is well loved. So I don't know, we'll have to see. You're probably right about the D-pad stuff, but interesting to see.
Real quick, I want to look up the Joy-Cons on the Switch OLED. Okay, so at least in the pictures we've seen, they're the same old Joy-Cons.
They're the same.
That's interesting because they already do
Like
have
most
like
things in the OLED Switch, it's the same.
right, exactly. They already do have like packaging images, and I feel like
They do, yeah.
if it were a new Joy-Con, maybe they would have announced that with the OLED.
I
And
think that would have been a
I don't
selling
know.
feature to the model, yeah.
I don't know. I just have this feeling that it's new Joy-Cons though. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see
Do
tomorrow.
we have confirmation about sizing for the OLED Switch? Because the OLED Switch is bigger screen wise. Is that bezel based, or is it? I think it's actually physically larger, right? Are there going to be proprietary Joy-Cons that are only for the OLED Switch? Right? I don't know how that works. Or could
That's
you
a
use
good
regular
question. Not that
something
I'm
I haven't looked
aware of.
into? We'll look into that. I'm not 100% sure.
Corrections, ggreplayshow@gmail.com if you know.
All right, and the next story we're moving on here. I have actually went online to make sure I pronounce this name correctly. The lead quest designer for The Witcher 3, Mateusz Tomaszkiewicz, has joined Riot to work on their League of Legends MMO project. Are you proud of me?
I'm
I thought
very
that sounded
proud,
pretty
Paul.
cool.
I am.
Mateusz Tomaszkiewicz.
All right, well, you don't have to keep saying it. We got it the first time.
I learned it, and I want to keep saying it. It's all I have today. He's joined Riot to work on their League of Legends MMO project. This guy has worked with CD Projekt Red for a while on The Witcher 3, Thronebreaker, and Cyberpunk 2077, lead quest designer. So that's pretty cool. I mean, quests, I would say, are definitely. Are you waiting for me to say it again? Lead quest designer.
I'm not waiting for that. No.
Tomaszkiewicz.
Thank you.
Obviously quests are one of the things that makes Witcher 3 so amazing. Main quests as well as all the incredible side quests. Something that makes the game a little bit overwhelming for me, but I think the quality of them is obviously extremely high and varied, and a lot of them as well, however you say that. Matt, how are you feeling about this? I will say before we throw to you that this Riot MMO is something we're kind of keeping an eye on, but also it's Riot, which doesn't necessarily inspire a ton of confidence. Also, I find it funny that it's funny, like, I'm like, who would go to work at Riot right now with all the shit that's going on at Riot? And I'm like, oh, who would be perfect? Someone who just came from the shit going on at CD Projekt Red, where he's like, hey, at least there's maybe less crunch.
It's probably also hard to say no to a Riot paycheck.
I agree. The Riot paychecks are probably incredibly high, especially when you have the kind of resume that this guy has.
Yeah.
This guy being Mateusz Tomaszkiewicz. And and I will say that honestly, it probably is a really cool and interesting project to work on. Matt, what's your take on this? Do you think this could lend more credence and more quality to this proposed Riot MMO?
Absolutely. I think, and this is going to be maybe controversial, I actually think the quest design of Cyberpunk 2077 is better than The Witcher 3. Now, I think the writing is better in The Witcher 3 than Cyberpunk, although I don't think Cyberpunk is bad. Cyberpunk's problems were not the quests, by the way.
No.
If you're saying that Cyberpunk's problems are the quests, then you're probably just jumping on the bandwagon to say any shit about Cyberpunk.
I have heard some people say like the side quests and like the lack thereof.
Yeah,
was some of
there
the
were
issue
some
there.
bad side quests like collecting cars and stuff.
The main
like that.
campaign, I think, is said to be quite good.
There were some really unique things happening with quests in Cyberpunk, whereas with Witcher 3, a lot of the quest design was very traditional RPG, which was made okay because the story was so interesting and the writing was so interesting. But Cyberpunk actually does really interesting things with their quests. So to me, that shows growth on his part as a quest designer. So yeah, I think this is good. I think this is going to benefit the Riot MMO. The Riot MMO is something I am very excited about, just because as an MMO fan and knowing that Riot has essentially an unlimited amount of resources to put this together, that they're showing by bringing in this quest designer with an extensive resume. So this is exciting. I think he's a good quest designer based on his work. And so yeah, this is only good. This is only good news for the Riot MMO. There's nothing bad about this news.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this Riot MMO has the best chance of being WoW-like in nature a little bit, bringing back some of that extremely stylized art style, if I can say, like, that cartoony, but also like a really rich and interesting look to it, I think, if they decide to go with the kind of looks that we see in League of Legends and other projects. And also in a lot of the attitude and the humor and the way they go about it, even right down to the toxic work environment. This is the closest to being WoW-like in its entirety, and I think that that's something. I myself am mixed on my feelings of Riot as of late, but I will say that this project does seem like it could really jump in the perfect moment to capture that WoW fan base who is flagging and says, "Hey, at least they're not Blizzard, right?" So yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's awesome to see quest design being such a big part because it can get really grindy in an MMO. And we saw Final Fantasy 14, which has an extensive story,
Yeah.
which
Too
is very
extensive.
different, too extensive for people like Matt and I, but also the right amount for some people. And I think people are clearly looking for a good story in an MMO, something I'm not really looking for. And I think it's also one of the complaints about WoW in the last little bit is that the story, they did put too much story in, but it wasn't good story. And I think that's the key here is maybe people are looking for story, but they're looking for good story. And I think Mateusz Tomaszkiewicz could hopefully lend credence to that. Matt, do you have anything else to add here?
Yeah, just one last thing. I think the Riot MMO, and this has sort of been an opinion of mine that's been formulating since it's been announced over time, is very casually announced, by the way, on
Yes.
Twitter. I think this is the closest we're going to get to a WoW 2.
Yeah.
In so
exactly.
many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm excited about it in that regard. And the people that they have working on it are good game designers. So it's an exciting
Blizzard
project.
talent, and yeah, there's a lot going on there. So Riot really does feel like an extension of maybe what Blizzard once was in some ways, and it'll be interesting to follow what we're going to see here. So it's kind of the Blizzard thing, right? They made these like games that were definitely popular, but were more constricted into their genre. RTS and an isometric RPG, that kind of thing. And then they were like, okay, let's take all that characterization we built and everything we've built in the groundwork and make this world. And it feels like Riot is right at that moment.
They really do feel like a second version of Blizzard. It's strange.
It does.
It's strange.
It does. It really does, and I'm psyched for it. So it'll be cool. It's again, they're a second version of Blizzard in all the good and bad ways. But I'm interested. I am interested in seeing this game because I think this could really pull us along. And I definitely think the rot there is a little less bad than we see at Blizzard. Moving on to talk about a little bit about Valve. Now, Valve has filed a new patent for, quote, tracking game file read operations and to allow instant play, where you can start a game before it finishes downloading. This makes total sense. Also, quote, other examples include freeing up space by removing unused data and prefetching data to decrease latency when loading. This feature does not require game developers to change anything. This news and quotes come from Pavel Jundik, creator of Steam Database, SteamDB, on Twitter. Now, this to me just makes perfect sense. This is Steam Deck stuff, I feel like. I think it's probably a couple of things. Not only do we see Windows 11, like we talked about before, allowing for direct storage, so that's going to help you, get to use a bit more of your SSD's speed and abilities to fetch data. But also, I think this makes total sense for Steam Deck. We see Xbox, we see PlayStation using, instant play. Xbox recently has added that addition where they made it a lot easier to instant play games as you're downloading them. Things like resuming play and prefetching data. This all makes total sense to someone who's going to get into hardware anyway, and also taking advantage of new software on current hardware like Windows 11. And I also think it's important to note them saying that they don't require game developers to change anything, because that is something that Steam has been very on it about. That's something that they're talking about with the Steam Deck already, is that a lot of the Steam Deck compatibility will not require, obviously to be perfect, you may want to require game developers to do something to get in there, but most games on Steam will be able to run on a Steam Deck with evidently very good compatibility without developers having to actually do anything. So that kind of also reads into this to me, that that it's something that are like, hey, don't worry about it. This is just a great thing we're going to put on the deck and possibly Windows 11. What do you think, Matt? Does that make sense? I think that's
There's a lot of large online games that already do this sort of thing, like under like proprietary launchers. So this is sort of just taking that technology and making it work for every game on Steam, which I'm sure is a massive undertaking, a massive project, but it makes sense. That's sort of the next evolution of what we've already seen happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember a long time ago, it's maybe been like 10 years at this point, when they introduced that in World of Warcraft, where you could start playing as the game was still
Yep.
downloading and patching. And so it's easy when they're doing it for their own game and making systems like that. But now Steam has to create, or Valve has to create a system on Steam that's going to allow you to do this with any game in their catalog. So of course that's much more difficult. But yeah, like I said, it's the next step in that technology. So yeah, this is awesome. This is great. Obviously, everyone has different download speeds. For me, it's not an issue. I'm lucky to have good internet where I live. That's not the case for people in the middle of the country or in other countries where internet speeds are different. So yeah, this is great. This is great for everyone.
Yeah, this is really, really great. I've noticed that those like talking about World of Warcraft, that prefetching and that being able to play before the game is finished downloading has actually gotten better for me over the years. Not only because of my internet speed probably improving, well, definitely improving, but also I think just the technology has gotten better at being able to do that. So thinking about how good that is now and thinking and seeing it on Xbox and other places, I think it's going to work really, really well on Steam. I'm really excited for that. And I think it's cool, even if your internet is very good, if you're downloading something that's like 80 gigs or something,
Yeah.
it might be nice to just like, it still might take a little while. It might take, 20, 30 minutes. It might be nice to just like pop in the game right now.
Yeah.
And by the time you're finished, like loading up and doing the tutorial, the game's finished and you can just play. And you could have played from the second you decided to play it. Really, really cool. Love this tech. And it's really, again, kudos to Valve for, adding this in without having to require developers to really do anything. Hopefully that stays that way because that's very, very cool.
I wonder how far this is off now that they filed the patent. I gotta assume, since the patent went official now, that probably means it's coming pretty quickly. I assume they probably held off on filing the patent until it was just about ready.
Finalized.
So
yeah.
maybe by the end of the year, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. I'd be looking forward to that again. If that coincides with the Steam Deck, I would not be surprised. People, that's a handheld device that you're going to want to use and be ready to play something. And the idea that I could like pick up something again, it's like 80 or 100 gigs, like Conan Exiles, and just click play and play it on the Steam Deck and stream it for maybe that first 20, 30 minutes before it becomes fully downloaded. I think that makes total sense with these always online devices. Really, 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 really cool. I'm excited to see that technology. I wouldn't be surprised if it came out around the same time. Let's move on and talk about Blizzard. We've talked about Blizzard a lot today, a lot, but we will a little bit a lot today, as we always tend to from our World of Warcraft fandom of our youth, and also all of the issues they are embroiled in. The story today is that the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, is now investigating Activision Blizzard. So before it was the state of California through their it's like their business division. I forget the exact title. And also there was also private lawsuits as well. We are now dealing with the SEC getting involved. Of course, when big money gets involved, when rich people get involved, that's when people will start caring, right? So we're gonna see that. That's gonna get even more of a big story than it already was. I think for people who don't even follow Blizzard and things like that, I think regular normies, your parents, might actually hear about this one with the SEC getting involved.
Wall Street.
This is a pretty big deal. The investigation, of course, is focused on, quote, the company's disclosures regarding employment matters and related issues, end quote. This was basically looking into if the investors were misled, right? So I think a lot of investors are saying, well, Bobby Kotick, if you knew about some of this harassment, if you knew some of this stuff was going to come out at some point or another, or that you knew, about Alex Afrasiabi or whatever, and that's why he left, blah, blah, why weren't we informed? Because, obviously the stock could tank and our investment could be lost. So, obviously they are pretty upset, not for really human rights reasons, more for money reasons. But, that's valid too, and is part of, how business works here. Bobby Kotick has been subpoenaed, the CEO, of course, of Activision Blizzard, to, obviously speak. And in addition, so we got some more news right after this. Blizzard's chief legal officer, Claire Hart, left the company very quickly. I don't blame anyone for leaving. A chief legal officer, let alone just
bad timing.
Forget this. I did see some stuff about possibly wanting to leave to not perjure herself or something. There's a lot of being very, very deeply involved in these things. Some of these, C-suite execs might be very, very involved and might not want to be part of the company during this period
Yeah.
because of what they know. An executive producer of Overwatch. We lost Jeff Kaplan. We lost some other great Overwatch people. And now Chaco Sunny has also resigned effective. So it's today, effective on Friday. He will be gone. That's basically what he said. And that is that's what he said. He said, like, hey, I'm leaving. He announced today I'm leaving. I'll be gone by Friday, which is pretty crazy. Not even like I'm leaving today. He's like, yeah, I got a couple days to ask me some questions before I'm the F out of here.
Let me get a few more days on the final paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Just for like the next poor soul to have to deal with whatever's going on with Overwatch 2, which has enough issues without all of this going on as well. And also worth mentioning too, while we're here, Blizzard continuing their rampage of going through and removing any sort of references to not only previous employees or current employees at Blizzard, but also removing anything that may even have a sexual connotation reference to it in the game.
Even a slight subtle innuendo.
Right. I mean, so we have stuff like, we obviously got popular this week. You may have seen the memes of paintings of like revealing characters in an inn or something. Those got changed to fruit, paintings of fruit. But then that character the painting is still in the game in revealing clothing, actually, which is pretty funny. That character model still exists, and I think in Classic, which is pretty funny. And also, they went through and changed. This was pretty blatant, but they had one called was it Big Love Rocket or whatever, and it had a pretty phallic shape on the tooltip, which did not look like what the actual mount looked like. They did change that to look more like the mount, but they also changed the name to X45 Heartbreaker, which I thought was pretty funny. Actually, I think it's a cooler name, but then that may be more overt, right? You're thinking, well, that sounds like something, but also, they removed that. Were those dragons or what's the twin consorts? That's
I don't know
some
exactly
kind of
what they are.
I don't remember exactly what they are.
They're
but they
Mogu
removed,
or something. They're Mogu,
bosses in Pandaria that were called the twin consorts. Presumably that they were both consorts to a queen or a king. We've seen the term
Lei
consort
Shen.
before. What?
They were consorts of Lei Shen.
Right. Sorry, I didn't play a lot of raiding in MOP, but of Lei Shen, and also didn't research apparently. There's a lot bigger stuff in the game. I mean, Black Temple especially has like an entire like sex dungeon portion, I think, which is
essentially, yeah.
Essentially, right? And it's like that thematically fits. I mean, stuff. Listen, I understand that things can be offensive or like overly gross, like frat boy gross, like being like, oh, the big dick mount. Like I get how that is maybe uncomfortable to some people, or the having a whatever. There's jokes or something that maybe you could. It's unrelated really to what they're really dealing with, I think, is the bottom line. But then you have stuff that thematically fits. Like, is the world supposed to be asexual? Are we supposed to pretend that this world has no? How do they even reproduce? It's very strange that we don't have to like shove it in everyone's face, but also it seems weird that they're going to remove every reference to like love and sex and any of that kind of stuff. The big thing is this just isn't related to anything going on.
Yeah.
This is like a weird, I hate that. I don't like the term virtue signaling, but I will say in this scenario, this is like textbook of what that would be. Instead of fixing the actual issues in the company, they're going through and removing sexual references that like, it'll be like, see, look, we did the thing. It's PC. And it's like, people didn't even care that you weren't PC. People cared that people are being harassed to the point of suicide. That's the issue. That is the issue here. Matt, what's your rundown from all the Blizzard stuff today? I've been talking for a while because I just have a lot. There's been a lot.
These changes aren't gonna stop. They're gonna keep coming until they've found every single thing that they want to change. You mentioned the Den of Delights or whatever it's called. In the Black Temple. Black Temple's not out in BC Classic yet. I would not be surprised if there are some major overhauls coming to Black Temple before it launches on BC Classic, and that is when people are really gonna press back on this, because you're right, it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with what's going on. It's weird, like Black Temple is supposed to be an unscrupulous place, like it's not
where all the demons get in and do like demon effed up stuff, like that is the whole point.
So like turning it into some other place with, I don't know what you replace all those demons with and what you rename it. But it would be something that probably isn't as relevant. Like, the idea is that you're going in there and you're fighting the bad guys. Like, this is the bad guys' home. It's okay if the bad guys aren't doing good guy things in their home.
Yeah.
That's the point. They're the bad guys.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just like, when you get to this point where you're making all these changes for whatever reason, I guess they're trying to do it to make it appear as though that they care about the situation, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like they've lost the point.
Yeah.
And they're going to continue to lose the point. I'm sure they see that people aren't agreeing with these changes, but at this point, they're just going to keep doing it because they seemingly feel like they have to.
Yep.
And it's not like it's really changing anything. So we'll see how deep they go with this. I don't think that they're anywhere near done.
I totally agree. I think honestly the biggest thing, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, maybe they can go to a courtroom and I just don't think they get it. I think that they really earnestly think they can go to a courtroom and be like, look at all the changes we've made and look at how we're better, and by pointing at this kind of stuff. And it's just like, you are missing the point. Like, the issue is harassment in the workplace. The issue is sexism in the work. It's not about the game. The game wasn't that bad. Like, yeah, there was some stuff in the game. We didn't want the guy who was allegedly and likely a perpetrator of sexual assault. We probably didn't want his name as a character in the game.
Right.
Sure, that's fine. But then it's like, but there were some jokes that were like on the line. Okay, we can stop now. We can stop. Like, you're not heroes for removing references to a game when you're not also fixing the issue. I think if they also like fix the workplace issues and then they wanted to say, okay, we want to go into and make the game have a different feel to it, that's their prerogative. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. But I think that they're doing that instead I think proves that they don't get it. Or if they do get it, they are certainly extremely unwilling, and they think this will trick people into that they're actually changing things somehow in the company. I think the biggest issue here is just that we're seeing so much brain drain. We're losing big executives. We're losing people, I think, people who probably deserve to go, who might be problematic individuals that we saw gone in the initial calling, after the stories originally came out. But now we might be seeing people, we don't know, Jacko Sunny, these people, who are directors on a game who might be a totally reasonable, problematic person, who might just be leaving because why would I stay at Blizzard right now? This is a dumpster fire. And especially someone like Sunny, who's working on Overwatch 2, which is a mess of a game. And partly maybe because of him, but probably might be something he inherited. It's hard to say. But ultimately, I think we're seeing a lot of this, and I don't think this is going to stop. I think every week we get new people who are gone from Blizzard, and I think we're going to see a lot of people. At a certain point, we're losing so many people. You can't just be like, oh, this person was probably a perpetrator because they left after all this. It's like, I think people are just starting to jump ship, and I'm surprised it even took this long. And I think we're going to keep seeing major developers leave until there is some severe change. And I think the co-CEOs right now, the co-leaders of Blizzard, are trying to maybe right the ship, but ultimately I think there's some deep rot that we need Kotick to deal with, and I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
Paul, this is a really interesting and unique scenario with Blizzard, because with World of Warcraft, we've never seen a game like that before that has lasted for so long. And so you get to a point where we find out that some of the initial leaders on that game were problematic, and it's a good thing that they're gone. But at the same time, that creates an issue where now you don't have the same vision for World of Warcraft because it's different people. So I feel like the vision for WoW is now lost and nobody knows what it is anymore.
Right, because we have new WoW, which a lot of people don't necessarily love, and they go like, "Well, what can we harken back to from old WoW?" But then a lot of people say, "Well, some old WoW was actually kind of problematic, and maybe it wasn't. Maybe the design was good, but was it? It's hard to look at that now. It's a little tainted, which I agree. It makes it hard to look. Where are we looking for direction? What era is definitive WoW, and what makes the most sense?"
Yeah, it's unique because we haven't seen anything like this before with a game
Not
that
only
has
have we not
lasted
seen a
this
game
long.
we haven't seen a game that lasted this long, and then in addition, a game that lasted this long, also by a company who is now having one of the most public gaming meltdowns in a very, very long time, gaming company meltdowns in a very, very long time, and is only beginning, I think. It's very interesting to look at. We're obviously going to keep following it. I hope we didn't bore everyone, but I think this was a really, really interesting discussion about this because I think there is just so much going on at Blizzard, and I'm sure we will have plenty more to talk about in the future.
What's the quote, Paul, where it's something like, what would be better to like live as a monster or die as a good man or something like that,
Yes.
where it's like it's almost like WoW is getting to
It's
that
like, what is it? Live
territory.
to you die as a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing. And
yeah.
it's very strange. Like at a certain point,
Yeah.
it might just be time to. I mean, WoW still makes money, so they're not going to do it. But at some point, maybe it's time to take it out to pasture and let the new people have their own vision for the game instead of having this game where it's all these crammed visions put together and in so many different directions and so many people have had their hand in it. Like it's time to just reset.
And like so many people say, this game is made on spaghetti code. A lot of the old stuff that exists, I mean, you look at Classic is a mess, but even Kata, a lot of the new stuff is still pretty messy, I think. And it's game built on game, built on game, built on game for like almost 20 years. And we're using very old tech here. Even the Kata stuff is 11 years old now or more. So I mean, this is a game that is not easy to, even if they wanted to make big changes, it's not easy to implement big changes. They would have to redo like most of the game to even really make any major changes that people would like in a lot of scenarios. It's a mess. And I think like what you're saying with putting it to pasture, I think there was such a long period of time where people were like, okay, let's put it out to pasture because the game's bad now. But now also the game's bad and the game's kind of tainted in some ways. And I think maybe you're right. I think maybe it's time to like give it a rest and let someone else come in and do something different. And I think if they don't do it themselves, which it doesn't seem like they're going to, then someone else like Riot is eventually going to come around and do it for them. And we had about 20 years almost of people saying WoW killer, WoW killer, WoW killer. I think honestly now, if someone comes out with their own WoW, we've had so many different. I think people stopped trying to make a WoW killer MMO and they started actually finally trying to make MMOs that are a little different. I think if someone now comes out with like a game that's good and like WoW, like Riot might do, they're actually going to kill WoW. We're seeing stuff like Final Fantasy 14 that doesn't even like WoW, and that's starting to kill WoW. People who don't even really love Final Fantasy 14 are playing that game just because it's better than WoW. And also they don't agree with Blizzard for Hong Kong or for the sexual harassment stuff for a lot of reasons. So even someone like Riot coming along and making something that actually is like a WoW 2, done. I think that'll be the nail in the coffin. So we'll have to keep following it. Maybe they can right the ship and change things around. But honestly, I'm feeling like this is kind of on life support right now. But I'll have to see. Talking about some more gaming turmoil, late last night, Apple informed Epic that Fortnite will be blacklisted. This is a quote from Tim Sweeney. Blacklisted from the Apple ecosystem until the exhaustion of all court appeals, which could be as long as a 5-year process. That's the quote from Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic Games and majority shareholder on Twitter. This is crazy. I mean, obviously we had the Epic Apple lawsuit go through. Epic kind of won in their ruling, but also they lost in one way where they had to give, from the countersuit, they had to give Apple, I think $6 million, was it? Or was it 6 million, 12 million? For Fortnite profits that were lost to Apple during that time that they should have had a cut of. And then obviously Fortnite kind of said, hey, or Epic said, hey, we want to put Fortnite in Korea maybe out there. We might want to put it back on the App Store. And Apple said, fuck no. You're still kind of suing us. You're appealing decisions. No, we're not going to, you're out of here. I mean, that makes total sense to me. I'm not like trying to corporate bootlick Apple, but I mean, yeah, I mean, between both of these big mega corps of nonsense, it makes sense why Apple would be like, no, you're not playing in our playground anymore. Go do your own thing. We don't need Fortnite. Matt, does this make sense to you? I feel like, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you have two just massive companies going at each other. It's just going to live in the courts forever until it just goes back and forth until, like Apple said, until the exhaustion of all court appeals, until they literally have no other place that they can go with their complaints and their lawsuit. Then yeah, it's just gonna keep going around in circles.
Yep, exactly. Makes total sense. And and when you burn bridges like this so hard too, I mean, and it just goes to show like human nature. You could be these big corporations, larger than life, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, you look at someone just kind of being like, hey, fuck you, Apple. We're going to like shake your whole thing down and publicly like insult them and say how they're like, ruining the internet. At that point, Yeah, I don't think you kind of burned a bridge, you know? I don't think Apple's going to be quick to forgive you when you didn't just like have a, oh, we think we have a fair lawsuit here. You went publicly and like tried to take them and Google and all the big companies down in this very public display. And yeah, you got a lot of press for it. I think a lot of people, more people knew about this lawsuit because of how aggressive it was in its publication. But yeah, I think you're burning a lot of bridges here, and you got to expect at this point, you know, good thing you have the Epic Game Store because you're going to need it.
I wonder if this could make certain developers hesitant to work with Epic now that they have such a strained relationship with Apple. And a developer might be like, I don't really want to get in the middle of that in case I ever need Apple in their app store.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go with Epic.
Yeah, I mean, we have yet to see that, but it'd be interesting to see if someone were to want to try to publish a game on Epic Game Store and then also maybe want to publish it on Apple Arcade or on the iPhone, maybe a game that would cross between mobile and PC in that way. And yeah, I wouldn't put it past either company to reject the game because of being on the other platform. Definitely makes sense to me. These companies are pretty embroiled in some bitter anger right now. It's a bummer to me as someone who just got back on the iPhone train. I kind of felt like playing some casual mobile Fortnite the other day just as like a goof, and then I remembered I can't. But also like, man, it's fine. It's not a big deal. I have a lot of other ways to do that. But
Now, the people who had Fortnite downloaded a long time ago, they can still play on the iPhone, right? You just can't download it now.
yeah, I don't think you can update it.
Oh, okay.
So I think once the season ended, you can't
Oh,
play it anymore.
okay.
So like the season when it first happened, I think you could play, but then you couldn't play anymore after that season, after there's like a big update, something to that degree. I'd have to be 100% confirmed, but I think it's something to that effect.
I got you.
But yeah, it's a mess. If you really want to play Fortnite on mobile, I will direct you to Android. All right, let's move on. Talk about something a little more positive in updates today. The PlayStation 5 firmware 2.0 update brings some performance improvements, which is great. According to Digital Foundry, we love Digital Foundry out there, who are always breaking down the minute improvements in hardware in very select scenarios. Quote. It does seem as though all PlayStation 5s are running faster than they were before with this new firmware. So, I mean, the changes are very minor, 2 to 3%, you know, faster. But, you know, that makes a difference. I'm kind of glad to see this because I know that the newer version of the PlayStation, like, there was talks about that running like a tiny bit better, like the new version with the improved heatsink.
Yeah, didn't
Um,
they get like new nuts and bolts or something like that on there?
They did. They changed the heatsink, and I think it affected the weight changed a little bit, and
Yeah.
the nuts and bolts, and it helped cooling like a tiny maybe bit, but not enough to actually affect performance. I think in a real way. Mostly it was about like weight of the console and some other things. But yeah, 2 to 3%. I mean, that's noticeable. That's cool. It's cool that all PS5s are feeling that update. They were able to do it through firmware. Are you excited to feel that 2 to 3% speed increase, Matt?
Totally. No, I
Yeah.
mean, on console, I'm not even like I need it to be steady 60 FPS on console. I don't. It's just a different feel on console. It doesn't. I'm not as worried about it. But any like the fact that we can get even like a small update like this with firmware is pretty cool. So
Mhm.
I'm happy about that. And like you said, yes, we love Digital Foundry. Their stuff is fantastic and fascinating to
Really, really
watch.
great.
2 to 3% faster. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but I don't know if that means a difference of like not dropping below 60 for some games, then that's great. I mean, there are some games that need that extra help. Like Control is a
Yeah.
game that can use that extra little bump. So that
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
good.
think a
It's
lot of
good
games that
news.
are running I think a lot of games that are running heavy RTX graphics and things like that, not RTX, but you know what I mean, ray trace graphics and things like that will really benefit from having that extra little bit. I know it's little, but any little bit helps, I think, and it's cool to see that. Maybe in the future we'll see even more. It opens that door, right, where firmware updates and things could potentially, you know, add to performance of a machine, which is cool. I mean, we saw it's nice to see that they didn't mention like removing anything either, because I know I was recently looking into like I was like going through all the old Xbox dashboards to like see what the best ones were and stuff. And they were talking about that feature on Xbox One because they had all those TV centric features, right? And video centric features at first that were really quite interesting if you were interested in that, if you weren't just game only, which most people they ended up going for that mood anyway. Snap, which is where you could like snap watching TV to the top. You could snap your TV stream up there, then you could play games below or whatever, which was kind of janky, but it was a cool feature. And actually, that was removed for the purposes of making the console run faster. It actually helped run the UI better. So that actually, because they weren't waiting for Snap to happen. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't remember that happening because I never really used Snap before. But yeah, a lot of people were kind of disappointed that they removed Snap, but more people, I think, who never even used it, like myself, were happier to get a faster dashboard. And that was, I think,
Yeah.
the big headline feature. It's cool to see, after just reading about that, it's interesting to see Sony just be like, hey, yeah, we added 2-3% performance and updated firmware, and we didn't remove anything. We just made it better, which is cool. I also think it's interesting to see software stuff pushed that's changing hardware so much. We see it with this, which is really interesting, but also Nintendo last week, adding that, software update that adds Bluetooth audio
Yeah.
to the Switch, which is a much wanted feature. It's so interesting to see companies able to push firmware or software updates that can fundamentally change how the hardware functions and runs. Is really, really cool. Obviously there's a lot in these consoles and these pieces of tech that we don't even know about maybe sometimes that could maybe be unlocked, and all it needs is an update, which is it's always cool to see now in the future here with like new technology and with the internet. It's a lot easier to update things like that, whereas in the past, if it were even if it were shipped with Bluetooth, but it was unactivated, it would just never be activated again.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing.
It's cool. Second life we're getting here to a lot of these things, which is really, really awesome. All right. Well, Matt, you know what? We had a great day, but I think that is going to be it for today's GG replay. But before everyone goes, I just want to remind everyone, if you are in the shower, get out right now. If you're driving your car, pull over to the side of the road. And you know what? If you are parachuting out of a helicopter, pull your phone out of your pocket, maybe with a lanyard on your wrist, and make sure that you give our podcast 5 stars or a like or a thumbs up on whatever your favorite podcast app is that you are listening to this on right now. We really, really, really appreciate it. Obviously, this is an audio-only podcast that you're hearing right now. You may be on video on the YouTube, which is awesome. The YouTube. Pulling out my boomer vernacular here. You can also give it a like there. Leave us a comment. Anything you guys do for us really, really helps get us forward in the algorithm and, allows us to make more content. In addition, don't forget, we do have a whole website, goodnightgroofs.com, where we have a blog and video and podcasts. And also we have links to all of our socials, including TikTok and Instagram, where we do have some exclusive video content sometimes, which is always great to check out. And if you really like what you see from us or hear from us, or read from us, we do also have a Patreon, patreon.com/goodnightgroofs. We have a $1, $3, and $5 tier. $3 gets you early access to our all-encompassing gaming podcast, Game Groofs, which does come out normally on a Sunday. We can get it on Friday, listen to it on your commute home. It's a beautiful thing, all for the price of $3, in addition to some other great perks you can get on our Patreon. So it's great value, I tell you. And you know what? Even if you're just thinking, these guys are nice, and I hear them talk about Patreon all the friggin' time, you can throw us a buck. That's nice. It's not much for you, but it makes all the world of difference to us. And our ability to continue to make this and hopefully make even more stuff for all of you lovely folks at home. Matt, do you have anything else to say before we head out of here for the rest of our day?
Well, I'm reading this breaking news. This just in. Blizzard is looking into contacting Sony about changing the name of the PS5 firmware update due to the innuendo in the word firmware.
Perfect. I don't know what you would I can't even think of what you said. They all sound bad. I don't think of any good way to do it. Bobby, it's up to you now. If you want to change, you better write it yourself. You might be a little busy though with your subpoena. All right, that is going to be it for today's episode of GG Replay. If you haven't listened to Game Groofs this week, it did come out on Sunday, so make sure to get back there and listen to it. But other than that, we will be back again on Friday with a lovely casual Friday episode of GG Replay like we always have. And also Game Groofs for our Patreons will be up that day, so that'll be exciting. As always, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and good night, Groofs.
Deathloop review coming this week.
Yes!